Hello and welcome to this episode of the Private Aviation Insider's Guide. I'm going to go a little bit off of my normal script of asking a pilot questions about his or her plane and how it works, because today we have the privilege of having Cameron English on the show with us, and Cameron flies as a part of his normal business operation, although his business is not in aviation. Cameron, can you tell us a little bit about what your business does and then go into how that's beneficial when using an aircraft?
Sure. First, let me say it's fun to be here talking to you. When I first saw your posts, I thought, what a great thing to promote aviation through these types of podcasts. But yeah, we have a small company. We have about 10 people. We're a manufacturer's representative for electronic components, electronic technology that would find its way into everything from military defense to consumer electronics. But our primary core business seems to be selling electronic components into applications, for example, like Honeywell's navigation products that are manufactured out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm proud to have won some new projects with Bendix King on the new touchscreen technology products that they developed over the past couple of years. If you have an XView in your aircraft, that touchscreen is from a manufacturer that I represent. We also have components that find their way applications. It's a pretty diverse spectrum of technology. We sell semiconductors, mainly the components that go on the board versus, say, things that you would purchase in a retail or industrial fashion. So we work mainly with engineers.
And then how big is your territory with that?
Well, that's really very appropriate for why I own the aircraft. We have offices in Orange County, California, right near to the John Wayne Airport, and we have offices in Scottsdale, relatively close to the North Scottsdale Airport. When I actually live in Prescott, and I keep my aircraft at the Prescott Airport. So my pattern of flying is quite a bit going back and forth to John Wayne. And with my performance profile, I can get to John Wayne and back and forth from John Wayne to Prescott in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on winds.
Okay, and then let's not keep anyone in suspense any longer. What do you fly?
Oh, it's a A36 turbocharged Bonanza, and it has about 2,700 hours on it. I personally have about 1,200 hours, and I'm flying probably about 30 hours a month to 40 hours a month.
That is fantastic. So I want to get into a little bit of why you chose that aircraft for this application.
Well, it was in the price range, which is a big factor, of course.
Of course.
I had a Mooney M20K, which, by the way, I'm 6'2" and 230 pounds. So people always talk about the Mooney being cramped in the cockpit. And they're right, except for it's amazing. It has this amazing leg length. It's the room available for stretching out your legs is really nice. And the Mooney is wicked fast for a small plane. You know, I know your followers at Fly Citations are probably laughing, but they won't laugh when I tell them in the Mooney I was doing about 170 knots, and the fuel consumption was probably like 14 gallons per hour. So
oh my gosh.
As a single pilot, and you're just going back and forth and you're up and down, it was a pretty amazing aircraft. But I have to admit, I wanted a little bit more room. So I scaled up to the A36, which is a 6-seater and has much more room in the cockpit.
So then tell me what it was that attracted you to the A36. I know you mentioned legroom, but what about the performance of that aircraft?
Well, at my home airport, we're at 5,000 feet, so I wanted something that was turbocharged. It basically is just a practical airplane, fuel consumption. I have a ceiling capability of 24,000 feet. It has oxygen. It's not pressurized, but it does have oxygen. I think my next step up would be a Baron. And then it's a big decision because you're doubling your expense pretty much across the board. So for my, typical commuting, I'm up and down. So I'm in Orange County within 2 hours. About the furthest I'll fly is maybe, as far as Texas and as far as Northern California. And we do a lot of business in New Mexico and in Utah. So all of my commutes are relatively short. So it's a good aircraft for that.
And what's your fuel burn now?
Believe it or not, I'm kind of a cheapskate. It's sort of like a game for me. Every time I land at Orange County, I sit around and wait to get the what it took to fill up, and I'm burning around 15 gallons per hour.
That's amazing. So it is a really relatively inexpensive way to get from point A to point B, and could actually be considered as a pretty low business expense once you add in what it costs in your time to be driving or flying commercial.
Yeah, when you look at it, I was involved with a business group called Entrepreneurs Association, and all these guys are all very dynamic. They're on the go. They have these wonderful creative businesses, and I tried to introduce them to the concept of aviation because how else can you just zoom around at your own schedule, and it's just so productive, and the cost is really manageable. So, for example, for me to come from Prescott and drive down to Phoenix and get on an airplane and go, I'm already into about a 4-hour window. And even if I'm, going across the country, you have to sit there and calculate. I can be in my plane in 15 minutes and in the air in realistically close to 30 minutes. And then I'm on my way. So I just try to encourage my friends that are business owners, you really want to look at this because it's affordable, it's convenient, and with all the chaos that exists in this economy today, it's been a lifesaver for me not to have to depend on all the cancellations that you see with commercial air travel. But mostly it facilitates me just being able to support my various offices. I can pop into San Diego and travel with one of my territory managers and be home for dinner. And that's really what I try to promote with other business owners is this is just a great option that you may want to look at.
Well, one of the other things with people now all of a sudden kind of wanting to get out of big cities and maybe live where their second residence is on a more permanent basis, being able to work from home from a remote location actually gives you a lot more flexibility to get where you need to go without having to drive back into a big city to catch a commercial flight, which, as you mentioned, is a little more limited these days than it was just 6 months ago. Tell me a little bit about your pilot workload when you're in the cockpit. What are you thinking about? What are you doing? And how taxing is that for you when you also have business on your mind?
It is a challenge, single pilot IFR, and especially when you're going into busy airports like John Wayne. John Wayne is famous for its marine layer, so it's usually the typical experience is you're just kind of like punching through a layer of IMC that is almost always prevalent, but it does get demanding at times. But for the most part, the good news for me is I'm doing sometimes the same trip over and over again. So it helps you to stay ahead of the curve in terms of what to expect. So I try to keep my personal minimums as high as possible. I was on a trip to John Wayne, the day that we heard the unfortunate news of Kobe's helicopter crash in LA. And before I even knew, I had looked at all of the conditions and I actually diverted to Palm Springs. So the beauty of general aviation is, I last minute popped into Palm Springs, jumped and got a rental car at the FBO and took off, and I was in Orange County. It delayed me by about an hour and a half, but it was so, the IMC was so severe that day that I just made a judgment call that I didn't want to push my personal limits. So that's an example of, how you have to kind of just be ahead of the curve.
That's great. Well, tell me what your trick is for shutting business out while you're flying.
I don't know. I think that's something that some pilots will probably share this experience, but I feel a sense of overwhelming serenity when I'm flying. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a perspective that everything seems so small down below you. I think pilots can identify with a feeling of, I feel the same way when I get out in the ocean on a small boat too, that I'm the captain. I just feel like I'm doing something that's peaceful. And for me, it's just very relaxing. And, my non-flying friends or family, they say, you consider this relaxing? I say, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel very relaxed when I'm up in the air.
Well, that's good. That's actually a secret, not how to separate the two, but that it probably makes you more productive when you land, that you've had that peaceful time, that serene time to really collect yourself and center yourself before you land and conduct a business meeting, which would be a bonus. And I'm glad that you talked about that. Karen, what would you say are the challenges of owning an aircraft and operating it yourself?
Well, I would say that, just keeping ahead of all of the general FAA requirements, I just went through my annual on my A36, and it's always frustrating to get those surprises, the little things. The little things seem to irritate me more than anything else. Last medical I went in and I was struggling with a blood pressure issue, I'm getting a little bit older, and these things come at you, and you have to realize that there are going to be challenges, but for me it's an easy choice just to keep working on overcoming them. And the investment in the aircraft has been amazingly affordable. I've never had to replace an engine. I mean, I've replaced props before. I've done a lot of investment in avionics, so I'm not saying that it's cheap, but I've been really fortunate, and I've never had any catastrophic failure of any major component on an aircraft. And I know that happens, and you have to budget for it. But I replaced all 6 cylinders on my A36 a year ago. So I wouldn't say that was cheap, but that was a choice. I wanted the assurance that I had good compression across all 6 cylinders. So those are the challenges. It's the unexpected little things that sneak up and get you, like needing to change my glasses, my prescription for my glasses. I know they're not big challenges, so nothing more than maybe you'd experienced if you were just trying to figure out how to fly commercially.
That's amazing. What has been your favorite moment in an airplane, or your favorite trip that you've taken? I always love to hear about the adventure of aviation.
Wow, there's so many. In fact, it's so many experiences. Flying to Guadalajara, when I had my office in Guadalajara, there's a canyon. If you fly towards Puerto Vallarta, then you turn inland, going away from the coast. There's a canyon that rivals the Grand Canyon in beauty. Waterfalls drop down to 3,500 feet, and just for over an hour experience some of the most pristine beauty you'll ever experience. Flying over the blue agave hills of Jalisco on your way to Guadalajara, it's hard to describe this, but the cactus they make tequila out of is a blue cactus. It's like a azul blue. It's hard to describe, but rolling hills for miles and miles and miles of this blue. It's a surreal look. And just 2 weeks ago, I just decided to get in the plane and for fun, do that corridor, the north and southbound corridor over the Grand Canyon. And I actually did a little videoing of it, and it's something really, again, it's food for the soul to look down at the Grand Canyon from 11,000 feet and view the perspective that it gives you. Other experiences, flying into Sonoma, California to visit my son. Asking for a permission to do some touring around the Golden Gate Bridge, things like that you don't realize in a small aircraft are just wonderful views.
Well, I've learned a couple of things from you today, and I really just want to sum them up for our listeners. Number one, aviation is an amazing business tool. It saves you a lot of time and energy, and it is fairly affordable, even with a company as small as yours that's just 10 people. Secondly, you're in control, and it sounds like you're able to go places and see things that other people might miss out on. And then third, the serenity that flying provides you as you center yourself and find that peace and look at the beauty and enjoy the beauty all around you is really something that I'm sure empowers you to be even a better business leader. So Cameron, thank you so much for being on with me today. I appreciate your time and wish you all the best with your aircraft.
Thank you, Renee. I really appreciate it.